What's going on, guys? It's Fear Turbo here. Today we're going to talk about my Poison Knight build for the Morrowind patch. This will be a Stamina DK, again, another heavy attack build. I'm just updating this one from, I think 1 Tamriel is when I posted this. We're just going to be using a gear that nobody is really taking a look at. Not the best gear, but still very effective gear. Pretty easy to get gear as well. And if Zos ever turns back time and reworks how proc sets work, or just how some of the proc sets work that are trial based, this may be some pretty awesome gear. But it still is very effective, even though it cannot crit. So what Zos did was they went back and they changed every set that procs to not crit, meaning monster helms, set items like Ophidian Jack of the Venom. So when this procs, it can't crit. Now, if it could crit, this set would be absolutely phenomenal for stamina DPS. It does a ton of damage. The tooltip's very high, and if it could crit, which means it could crit very high with your crit hit damage, you're looking at some serious DPS. But it cannot crit, so just let everyone know that it can't crit. But the cool thing about this is that when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack against an enemy who has poison damage abilities on them, so Stamina DK has a couple of them. It has 2 class abilities and then a weapon ability that's poison, right? So we're going to have poison on the target. You have a 25% chance to deal an additional poison damage. This effect can occur once every second. So what happens is you'll get more uptime or more procs when you do a dual wield heavy attack. The reason for this is because dual wield heavy attack has 2 weapons, and when you do a dual wield heavy attack, they attack twice, so they hit twice, and so they hit once every second. So when you smack the enemy, it has a chance to proc on each heavy attack, which is very freaking cool. It's like it's like if this set could crit, right? Man, if only. But even though it can't crit, it still does pretty good damage because it scales pretty dang good off the CP. I think that's the only thing it scales off of is CP. Just like all kind of procs here, they scale off CP. So the way to do this is, if you don't want to spend a bunch of AP, the way to do this is to do Hell Raw and I think hard mode. I'm pretty sure hard mode. That way you can get the jewelry golden. Or what you could do is you could go to the gold vendor for the AP vendor and get Viper necklaces and rings golden. And so I don't have actually the Venom neck, so I just used one of my Viper necks. All weapon damage enchants, which is very awesome. Because we're doing heavy attacks, our sustain comes from that. And so we get to benefit from having all damage. I don't have enough wax or else I'd gold this out, but this is very good. It does hit for like, I think the tooltip's close to 9k on here, and Viper's like 8,500 or something like that. So this is all poison damage. Basically the theme of this build, we're having poison damage procs here, poison damage procs on Viper. Then we have Veladrath, which says disease, but we can just pretend it's poison for the most part. We got a guy training in the guild house, gonna slap on that guy. So we're using daggers now. See, this one says Knife of the Shadows, and this one says Dagger of the Viper. I got these at 2 different points in the game, and this is a drop set. It's a named drop set in Fungal Grotto 1, I believe. Yeah, Fungal Grotto 1. One of the bosses drops this in sharpened all the time, so this is actually very easy to get. You just run Viper over and over, and I'm sorry, you just run Fungal Grotto 1 over and over on normal, which is extremely easy. You grab some DPS buddies and you just go in there and self-heal, and you can just pretty much farm the certain boss that drops this name set, and you'll be set. It'll have 2 of them, 2 daggers. You want them both sharpened. That's the only thing that come in, and 1 poison damage enchant and 1 weapon damage enchant here. Obviously, you can change the helmets to your liking, but this is the poison theme, so we're going with Veladrath. Even though it says disease damage, we'll just pretend. Don't worry about it. This guy's gonna come up, take a look at me. He's like, "Oh god, gotta run." All right, so we got a Maelstrom Bow in the back bar. Obviously, the Maelstrom Bow is one of the best one pieces in the game. It has a massive damage to your hail. Your hail is always at number 1 in the DPS department if you keep it up. So if you don't have a VMA bow, you can use a Master Bow, which I don't think I have on me. Oh yeah, I do. You'll want sharpened for sure. The extra infuse isn't worth it because ground dots take your impact bar. So you'll want sharpened on the Maelstrom bow, or I'm sorry, the Master Bow and the Maelstrom bow. But Masters is another good one. If you don't have that, you can just use a regular crafted bow with another enchant on it, probably Disease, because you're covered your bases here. Maybe Disease on the back bar. So yeah, guys, this is easy to get gear. I'm pretty sure you can get this set in Hellraw normal mode. I'm almost positive. Can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how I got it. I got it pretty quick. I actually have every slot piece of the Venom. It's pretty common. You're going to want all Divines, all Stamina enchants. Our health is going to be a little low, so if you want to put attributes into health, that's perfectly fine. Or if you would like to use Mephalas and with your heavy attacks, you are more than welcome to do that, because it'll definitely give you that sweet spot of health right there. Also, this does poison damage. Well, I like Belladra with this build. It just looks super cool. So yeah, guys, this is the Poison Knight here, updated for the Morrowind patch. It's pretty easy. We'll get into the skills and passives in a second. I'll see you then. Alrighty, so we're here with the skills and passives section, and we're going to talk about how they work in relation to each other. So I'm putting all of the builds into one on the skills and passives part, so I don't have to film them separately. So bear with me here. We're going to go through a couple different things. Pretty much all the builds use the same thing bars wise. The only difference is if you're using BMA daggers, you gotta have rapid strikes here, and that's the only difference. So also, if you're using a light attack build, you might have this here instead of molten armaments, but that's about the only difference here. So we're going to talk about the skills and how they work and why they work so well. So let's start with the front bar here. We got Rending Slashes. Again, very, very effective bleed. It goes through all armor, so it doesn't scale off penetration, but what happens is if you're using a heavy attack build like Flame Knight or the Poison Knight, you don't have a lot of penetration, so Rending Slashes becomes more effective, which is very, very nice. If you're using Two-Fang Snake, you have a lot of penetration, and so it becomes a little bit less effective, but it's still a very nice dot. Also, you can empower it with the Rapid Strikes build with the VMA daggers. So we got Rending Slashes, we have Venomous Claw. Now, this ability is strong, very strong. It has an initial hit, it has the damage over time, and the poison damage over time is increased. The damage is increased for the duration, throughout the duration. It deals 12% more damage every 2 seconds. That is amazing. So you're going to want to let this duration go all the way through to get the max benefit. And it only costs 1,000 stamina. That's awesome. We have 1,500 stamina cost right here, 1,000 stamina cost right here. Boom. Already low cost. And if we're doing the Maelstrom rotation, we can sustain it very easily. If we're doing the heavy attack rotation, no problem. So we have Deadly Cloak here, no brainer. It does cost a little bit more because it's an AoE skill, but it is big time defense. It does 25% reduced damage from AoE abilities. Very, very good. I like to keep it up 100% of the time, just as a defensive standpoint. Also helps your healers out because you don't want to take big damage. You'll take less damage. It doesn't do a whole lot of DPS in single target. It does do a good amount, and then gets increased by the dual wield passives. But again, it's mainly here for the defense more so than the offense. So this ability right here, this spot, is Noxious Breath. It's going to give you Major Fracture if you're in solo play. Very, very, very good. Again, another little tip here, you can apply this to the portal and BMA. So when the mobs are spawning, you can apply Major Fracture to them. Also very good for boss burns. It has a weak initial hit, but a decent dot damage over time ability, and it's poison damage, which is great for the poison build if you're using the Venom set. It's another added dot that's really good. Last 10 seconds, which is pretty long. Doesn't cost a whole lot, but it is an AoE skill, but it doesn't cost a whole lot. You can see that it's 700 less than Deadly Cloak. I think the reason for that is because it's conal and not full AoE. So that's pretty nice. But if you're using the Rapid Strikes VMA dagger build, you'll have this here. If you're using the light attack build, you'll have Evil Hunter here. So on the light attack build, you'll have 3% more weapon damage here. But on the heavy attack build, you'll have Molten Armaments here. And what this does is this gives your heavy attacks 40% more damage while active. So this is very important. Again, it costs Magicka, so we're pretty cool there. The only downside to this ability, I would say, is that it doesn't give weapon damage. It gives, major sorcery, which is spell damage. If it gave weapon damage, spell damage, and then had, this one does heavy attack damage and the other one did something else, that would be pretty awesome for solo play or for people that don't like to use a bunch of potions to get their buff. But for those that are doing like trials and stuff, you're most likely using weapon pots, so it's not too bad. So this is going to give our heavy attack big damage. Really big damage. It's going to make up for, not using a skill. Heavy attacks are going to give us our resources, and so this really plays into that, increasing our damage even more. Again, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker here for the extra 5% weapon damage. Very nice. Again, if you substitute out one of the sets that was in the build to improve the build, so say you took off Sunder Flame for War Machine, you would want to use Flawless Dawnbreaker over Standard because Standard costs 250. You'd get better uptime on Dawnbreaker. If on the Combustion build, if you wanted to substitute out one of the sets, so if you wanted to substitute 2-piece Krog and 3 Vicious Ophidian from the Maelstrom build, your bar would look like this, and you would want Rend, because Rend is 25 ult more than Dawnbreaker and will do substantially greater DPS because you're empowering it with the VMA daggers, and it'll get almost full duration of the Major Slayer, which is extremely strong, especially on a DK when you spec into a lot into Thaumaturge CP. It's very, very good. So that's the VMA. This would be the VMA bar build-up right here for if you wanted to do a War Machine with the 2-Fanged Snake setup with the VMA daggers. I know this is a lot into one video, so don't worry about that. So if you're using the heavy attack, no VMA dagger build, then your bars look like that. Just like that. And all the bars will be on the website. I just wanted to go over how the passives work with the skills. So for the Stam DragonKnight, we have burning and poison effects are going to be 66% stronger on a DragonKnight. Also another thing is increases the damage of your fiery breaths, all this good stuff, and the duration. Poison and flame damage area of effect, so pretty much just Noxious Breath will do more damage with that passive. You don't really need any of these passives except for this last one, which is a nice spell damage bonus, or I'm sorry, spell resistance bonus. Again, lasts longer on your Molten Armaments, which is really nice. Battle Roar right here. So this is going to be a part of your sustain, right? So when you use an ultimate, you get 46 health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost. So 46 on the 125. So each point of the ultimate's cost, you'll get an extra 46 in each resource. They changed this. It used to go off of how much I believe your stat pool was. I think they changed this. Yep, they did. So also this one right here, which is pretty freaking awesome. All right, so we already have a lot of sustain in the heavy attack builds, but when we click Molten Armaments, we're going to get some stamina back here. right here. We'll get 990 stamina back. It used to give you 5% of your max stam back, I believe, but they changed this again. I believe to character level, so it's always going to be this value no matter what. And also, we get minor brutality when we activate this ability. So in some of my DPS tests, you'll see that the tank is doing Igneous Shield. Pretty much, it's a guaranteed that you're going to have a DK in your group, and he's going to be doing Igneous Shield. So the minor brutality buff isn't much of a big deal because you're almost 100% time. I would say 100% of the time you're always going to have this buff because he needs to cast it one time out of 20 seconds, and bet your ass he's casting that more than once every 20. So this will be, all the bars will be on the website if you get confused. So for each individual build, there'll be a link in the description, and you can go look at the bars. I just wanted to go over the passives in one go here. For dual wield, there is a increased damage for dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So that means Rending Slashes, Deadly Cloak, Rapid Strikes, if you're using the VMA build, and Rend get extra damage under 25% health. Now, the DK doesn't have an execute, so this is a nice boost to our damage once we get 25. Everyone's going to be swapping over to Killer's Blade, Impel, Jesus Beam, Radiant Oppression, and Sorks are going to execute at 20%, whatnot. We don't have an execute, but we have a dual wield execute, which is actually very, very nice, especially if you're using the VMA dagger build with War Machine using Rend. Let's see. What else? Oh, so that's pretty much the front bar. Again, for the builds that have low penetration, we want 2 axes, and so the axes will proc a bleed. And since we have 2 axes, we'll get a 16% chance to proc that bleed, which is very, very nice. Another thing is the daggers will give us 5% crit rating, which is very, very huge. That's why we want 2 daggers. If we have max penetration, definitely want those daggers. All right, so let's move on to the back bar. The back bar here is Poison Injection. Poison Injection is a phenomenal skill. It's ranged, it has an initial hit, it has a great damage over time, it lasts great, a really good amount, and it has an execute part. So this is another weapon thing that we have for an execute, which is very, very awesome. Endless Hell, best damage ability that the stamina classes have. Goes great with the Maelstrom Bow here. Again, if you don't have the Maelstrom Bow, you can go with the ones I suggested earlier, but the Maelstrom Bow boosts this damage to such high potential. It's so good, and this skill attacks on a 0.5, which makes it super effective for proccing things, for doing damage to keep up a certain buff like Two-Fang Snake, or if you're a Sork, you crit surge, etc. I know we're not talking about Sorks, but this skill is super, super strong. Ramming Trap here, again, on the back bar. We're going to place it down before we do our Hail, and then we're going to do Poison Injection and so forth. You want a light attack in between all of these because this passive is actually very important. Very important. Only in certain cases would you not really care as much about this passive, but for all the builds that don't require Maelstrom daggers, stuff like that, or if you're using axes and so forth, this is extremely strong. So every time you light attack, you gain 5% damage on your bow abilities, which is 2 abilities right here, by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. That's a lot of 5. So 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, right? That's strong. You're getting so much damage on top of your VMA bow, increasing your hail, on top of Hawkeye, increasing your hail. Oh, it's so strong, right? Super, super, super strong. And you'll get the max benefit out of it if you light attack, boom, 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 and then come back. Your hail's got 5 seconds on it, whatnot. 7 seconds when you flip over, and then boom, it's getting so much increase in damage. It's extremely strong. Razor Caltrops, we can sustain it on the heavy attack builds. we can sustain it on the dubious food builds. It is good to go. We can sustain it on DK in general because we get so much resources back from using an ultimate, using an Earth and Heart ability, dubious food, or heavy attacking, whatnot. Sustain is great, and so we can carry the weight of the high cost caltrops, casting in every 12 seconds. It's perfectly fine. Now this skill, right? Flames of Oblivion. This skill hits so hard for a flame damage skill, right? If we're speccing into high penetration, it's usually physical. And since this does flame damage, it scales off spell pen. So if we have sharpened weapons or points in master at arms, this skill hits hard. It always has hit hard throughout all of the patches. It's just a great single target skill. It just does so much damage per hit, as it's going out. Boom, boom, boom. You just click it once and it does its thing. This thing is awesome, and it lasts long. That's what I like. It lasts 15 seconds, just like Deadly Cloak. So you do that one last, and you just flip switch, and boom. It's this little, has a cool effect too. That's why I like it. And so it flies around you, and then it shoots at the enemy, and man, it hit strong. For a flame ability on a stand build, it hits really, really awesome. So we're using Standard of Might here. Again, if you're using a different setup, so like War Machine, you would be using your front bar ultimate, Rend or Dawnbreaker, or if you go with Standard of Might, this is also another good path. You could go with the bow on the back bar as well. It's all up to preference here. Standard is still a very strong ultimate, even though it does flame damage. It's still very strong for increasing your damage for 17 seconds. Yeah, 17 seconds of 15% increased damage. So when you use this ultimate, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your dots out, drop your ultimate, go back to your front bar, and then as your dots are going out, you're going to apply them again. And this does phenomenal damage. It's always has been one of the best ultimates in the game, and it still holds strong, even though it costs $250. It's still a very, very good ultimate. But there is other options. Again, if you're using the bow ultimate, you're going to want to use it last, right before you swap, because you want to get all those light attacks out, light attack, light attack, light attack, and then use the bow ultimate and then swap. And that way the bow has the full duration for the time it shoots, to the time it's done. It'll be 5.2 seconds, I think, at max rank. And you want the turret morph. It'll shoot and it'll be boosted so much by the Hawkeye passive, you'll love it. So you can use that if you're using the Maelstrom daggers. You can use Rend with War Machine, etc. You can use Dawnbreaker if you're using War Machine on a heavy attack build that isn't using VMA daggers. There's so much to play with, guys, and it's all up to you. It's whatever you like. It's whatever works best for you will be the best for you, to put it simply as I can. So, guys, that was the skills and passives. Oh, before I forget, I always forget this. Very important alchemy. I'm pretty sure Outcast has a video guide on how to get this up pretty fast. It's super effective. It's a must-have because if you're using weapon damage pots, this will keep up your buff all the time, and it'll keep up your sustain all the time. It's very important to have this. Again, racial passives. Obviously, if you're using heavy attack build, go with Khajiit. If you're going, you need more sustain, Redguard is the king of that because it has stamina recovery, max stam, and stamina on hit. As far as other passives that are important, Slayer is very important because when you put on these skills here, you get 3% weapon damage for having them slotted, and on top of Flawless Dawnbreaker being 5%, and you get extra 3 from Evil Hunter, makes it very, very nice. If you're killing undead, Daedric, or werewolf, maybe you're in a dungeon or you're doing, Dragonstar Arena, there's also those things. And your Fighter's Guild abilities, you need this one if you're doing, again, first undead, Daedric, and werewolf, 20% stronger. Very, very good. I don't think there's any other things here except for, basically have your medium armor and your dual wield and your bow passive leveled, etc. So I think we're good here, guys. We're going to move on to the character sheet and take a look at it so you can compare stats, or maybe if you go without your gear, unlike me, I'm kind of poor here. Send me your money, JK. All right, so you can send me the money. I'm at. So we'll take a look at the character sheet here, and so we can compare stats, and you can see the Mundus stone, food, etc. So we'll head over to that section in a bit. I'll see you there. Alrighty, so we're here with the character sheet for the Poison Knight. Now, again, the health is a little low, so if you want to put some more points in health, by all means do it. I just play a little bit on the, on the risky side, I guess. 16.4 is pretty low, but you get Eben, you're at 17.4, Warhorn 18.5, 19k, somewhere in there. Then you get shields from tanks, from the igneous spamming that they're doing, or that they should be doing, to give you massive shields, which will be like anywhere from 5 to 8k, somewhere in there from the nerf, but those are pretty solid. Again, you can use Blood Craze for a little heal on your DK, and then you have Deadly Cloak for defense, so this health is pretty good if you're in an experienced group and you're getting heals and stuff. If you're not, just throw some points into health, you'll be good to go. Especially throw some points into health if you're doing VMA, although you probably wouldn't be using this build anyway. Big crit, again, we'll have 74.8, we'll get another 3% from a Nightblade, so we got great crit. Our damage, weapon damage is a little low here, for the simple fact that Poison Knight build uses procs. It's getting a lot of damage, consistent damage through procking, Belladreth, Venom Set, Viper, and so forth. So that kind of makes up for the lack of weapon damage, but that's why our weapon damage is a little lower, because we're not speccing into that as much. Again, stamina recovery isn't a big of an issue. Let's go ahead and buff up. So stamina recovery isn't that big of an issue because we're heavy attacking. Our resistance are a little low, but like I said, we'll have the defenses from everything I talked about. Thief Mundus, pretty much the way to go here, because it'll boost all of our damage. We'll get plenty of crit hit damage from the CP, and we're using max health and max stam food, because we're heavy attacking. We want to get all of that damage that we possibly can. Our resource sustain is plentiful from heavy attack. So that's the Poison Knight build. Guys, you'll have some better stats. Obviously, I can't gold out every bit of my gear. I mean, I'm trying, but, but this gear is purple, so you'll see better stats here in terms of stamina, in terms of weapon crit, because the divines will be golden and etc. So you'll see a little bit more stats here if you invest in this gear. I just don't have the money to do it, all of it, but the DPS test will be done with purple gear, so keep that in mind. So you'll see just a little bit of boost here, because this will be close to 9k, and Viper will be close to 8.3 or 4, I believe. But those two proc sets are really, and Belladreth are really good with the Master at Arms CP. So guys, if you have any questions about that, about the character sheet stat, I know a lot of people like to compare stats. Just keep in mind what color mine is, etc. Also, thing to note, again, you want to stam enchant here, but I have a try enchant for some reason. I think I was using this for PvP or something. That's why my health is a little higher. So guys, we're going to move over. Oh, we're not doing the champion points in the build video because I'm broke. And I should have thought of this before I did 5 builds for the Stam DK, but I tested the CP, I tested the damage, and then I went on to the next build, tested the CP and the damage, and then I never recorded the actual CP I used. I only wrote it down, so I didn't record it for the video. So I only have 59k left, and I can't just spend 3k on each video, so I'll write it on the site. The CP will go on the site. The next segment will be add-ons and DPS rotation, which are extremely easy, guys, for these heavy attack builds. So I'll see you then. I'll see you there. Alrighty, so we're here with the add-ons for DPS and rotation part of the video. I'm just going to go over some simple tips and tricks, what I do, the add-ons I use, and so forth. So let's get right into that. Let's check out those add-ons. So basically, the add-ons I use for DPS or in general would be Surrender. Surrender is going to give us our damage buff timers. Obviously, if you're on console, you're not going to have access to these. You're just going to have to use the in-game ones, but for the PC players here, we're just going to go over this real quick. So Surrender is going to basically have a bunch of aura control display groups. Your short, long, major, minor, toggled, ground, enchants, gear procs, passives, buffs, target debuffs. I'm sorry, target debuffs and target buffs. So what happens here is we don't necessarily need most of this information. Once we've learned our class, we learned what we're using. We don't need to see our major buffs. We don't need to see our toggle buffs. We would know things of nature. Our gear procs, we know what gear we're using, enchants and stuff like that. So we don't need to know proc. It is good information to see. Maybe if you had like damage text flying up or a box here showing the damage and then seeing your gear chance proc and seeing how they affect your damage and so forth. But other than that, we pretty much do not display most of this information. What we're going to display is ground targets AoEs, so things like Endless Hail, Caltrops, stuff like that, and target debuffs. What this is going to do is rending slashes and poison injection. Those are debuffs on the target. That's what they're considered as, because they are applied per target. So if I look at this target and I apply poison injection, you'll see it. But if I look at this target, you won't see it. So that way you can keep kind of track of who you poison inject, because you can do that to multiple targets. If I just do rending slashes to this guy, he has a bleed on him. You can see the effect is actually visible as well. This guy will be bleeding and he'll be poisoned. This guy is just bleeding. So pretty cool stuff. Very, very useful add-on. Also the ground dots and stuff like that. Now let's just go ahead and get rid of that Caltrops part of it. So when I throw Caltrops, you see that it has like 2 timers. We only want 1 timer. We want the actual dot. So let's go in here and figure that out. So to do this is go to the debug option, turn on a aura display ID. When I throw Caltrops, it's going to have 2. Oh, they're the same number, so I guess I can't do that. So let's say, for example, we don't want to know if the boss has major or if this ad has major fracture, right? See major fractures on there, 619. And 2, 1, 1. Okay. Okay, so what we do is we'll go here, go to add-on, Surrender, go to filters, blacklist, we'll type in 6191. And major fracture has been added to the blacklist and will no longer display. What this does is we add this, we'll no longer see that buff, because if we know our skill, it adds major fracture. We don't need that information in our window, right? So we don't need to know that. So those are just little tips and tricks there of how to use Surrender. Another thing is Raid Notifier is extremely good for trials. If you're going for trials, you're going to want to have this definitely. You know, Wooler did a great job. These other guys did a great job. This add-on is very, very phenomenal. You know, you can turn off settings that you don't need to see, turn on settings. Good for raid leading as well. Raid leading, this is extremely good for the fact that you can call out multiple things. So when the call lightning comes down on you in AA, you can change this to all, and you can basically it'll pop up on your screen telling you the person that is getting this call lightning, so that you the raid leader can notify them if you're going for like a training run, if they don't know what's going on. and they have the add-on, they see it, but there's so much stuff going on their screen, they're overwhelmed. This information will be useful so that you can tell them what's going on, tell them what they need to do after that, and so forth. So there's little things in here like that that are really good for raid leading. Unstable Void is, you know, extremely effective for raid leading. Tell somebody they got the little time bomb on them, go to the wall, do etc. So that helps you with raid leading, also with self awareness and like knowing the mechanics and stuff like that. I highly recommend. Um, FTC. Now, FTC is here just for the health bars. I kind of like it. I've always had FTC. I had FTC damage before, but damage statistics before, scrolling text, all that. I kind of got rid of that over time and just stuck with just the health bars. You can use the in-game health bars, whatever. I just use FTC for the health bars. As you see, I have everything else off. Um, Dressing room. Dressing room is very useful. There's other add-ons like dressing room. Basically, what dressing room does is allow you to switch gear. So I have this hotkeyed as F4, and I can switch gear through all my different builds and so forth. So um, it's very good for when you're going through trials. That if say I want to play the Poison Knight, but I also after the boss is dead, we got to go through some trash. I don't. Right here, it has my gear saved right here, but up here, AoE, right? There's no gear. If I hover over AoE, there's no gear, just like this one. So what that means is I click set 2, where I can hotkey this on my keyboard, and I don't have to go to the window, but I can click this and it'll change my bar with my current gear and so forth. So that's how I kind of go about it. Another thing is Dark UI is just makes everything transition very nicely. Gives nice little borders and stuff like that. I know a lot of people ask about that. Dark UI is everything. The difference in why mine looks different like this. Transparent here. My health bars, everything's highlighted. Like my skill bars are black around the outside. Combat metrics is massive. Okay, so what this does is this allows me to understand where my damage is coming from, how I can set up my CP, right? So if we just do a couple skills on this guy. Boom. Okay, so we did some skills, and once combat ends, we can go into our combat metrics. You see at the bottom above my ability bar, that's where it's showing the statistic there. But if I hotkey it, which I have it to number pad number 9, it'll come up and it'll give us this information. So for these targets, I did the most damage to these targets. These were in the back, probably didn't get much damage to them, etc. It's going to tell me my uptime. Thief is always going, food's always going. My minor force uptime, which is my trap, Flames of Oblivion, Hawkeye passive, which is important, Berserk, enchant, and so forth. So also what it's going to tell me is that my max stats during the fight, my average stats during the fight, my drain, my stamina drain, how much drain, like how much stamina I'm using per second, and then how much I'm actually getting back per second. How much damage I did out of the group, which is weird. I don't know why it says 0. My DPS, and then you can go through here, and that'll be your single target DPS, the damage that you did. Then you can go through here and see 80% crit on hell. This is how much DPS it did. This is how much damage it did. Non-crit crits. It did 47% of my damage in the AoE fight there that we had, and so forth. So basically, this is giving you a plethora of information, right? Not to mention, you can see your own healing done, your incoming damage, so that you can see what's killing you, how much it's hitting you for. That you can compare with other people. Maybe you need to change your red CP. Very useful here as well. How much healing you're getting. in terms of who's healing you. So you can see that maybe healer 1 is healing you for 90% of the time, and healer 2 is not healing you at all. So if situations where you're supposed to be getting healed by both and you're not, then you can kind of compare and look at strategies and see why that is. So this is a plethora of information and helps you to not only with DPS but strategy wise with healing done, damage taken, etc. So this is a very important add-on to have, and I highly recommend this add-on. It's extremely good, and whoever made it is the mastermind of all. Um, that guy right there. So, Bug Eater again just takes up all those little messages you see on the screen, LUI, blah blah blah, message something happened. This just basically suppresses them, because they don't really matter. I'm not really sure what that is. So those are kind of the add-ons that I use, guys, that help me perform in a trial setting or in any setting, really, in dungeons, so forth, strategies, all that good stuff. So now that that's taken care of, let's look at some DPS. So I just have any old gear on, and I'm just going to look at the rotation for all the heavy attack builds. So Searing Venom, Poison Knight, Flame Knight, Mephal's Web. I have all that. Mephal's Venom. Yeah. So all the ones that don't need Maelstrom weapons. This is going to be the rotation for those, because they're all very similar. They're all the same. So with that being said, I just got 2 random headpieces and some gear here from the other sets. So the rotation, right? So when I start a fight, I like to put Trap down and then Hail, because they usually hit around the same time. If you're walking into a fight, you can do Hail, then put Trap down. They'll hit exactly the same time. Boom. And then you can do Injection. So let's do it here. Let's say we're walking in on this guy. So before the fight, we want to do as many skills as we can before the fight, which will allow us more time while we're applying everything else. So I can do all of these, come here, and just like that. So basically, on all the heavy attack builds, there's going to be heavy attack dot, heavy attack dot. Another thing you can do, if you want to, is after you're coming in, you'll put Trap down, Hail, do a nice little injection, light attack, caltrops, light attack, Oblivion, and then swap bars. When you come to the front bar, you have 2 things you can do, depending on how your stam looks, right? You can do heavy attack, then your dots, if you need stamina, or when you come to the front bar, say you're doing all these, you can just come and apply them real quick, and then do a heavy attack. Probably applying them before you start just heavy attack route will increase your DPS, for the simple fact that they'll be, they won't be running, these dots won't be running while you're heavy attacking. They don't last that long, and so when you apply them to the boss and then you go do your back bar, right? And while you're doing your back bar, they're probably going to run out, right? And then see, if I did a heavy attack, they're running out now. So it does work out, but they'll have some downtime. But that's fine with this build. You don't have to keep up your dots a whole lot, like every second, like most builds. You're getting damage and resources from the heavies, so they're very effective. So you can just keep doing whatever dots you want to do. I usually come back to the front bar and do a heavy attack, then Venomous Claw. As we went over these skills and gear earlier, and passives. As you can tell, this one, it does a lot of damage. So that's why I always do this one first, then I do Rending Slashes, and then I do Noxious Breath before I swap. And I make sure Deadly Cloak is up before I swap. I do this Molten Armaments buff every 3 swaps. So this has a long duration. If you look at it, it's 40 seconds basically. And you can have a little bit of downtime on it. 39.6 seconds, basically 40 seconds. So every 3 swaps or 4, just depending on what's going on. So I like to apply it before I swap. So if we take a look at my bars here, my little tracker on the left, when we start this fight. I don't know why Caltrops didn't go out. Then we just heavy attack, right? Do a deadly cloak swap. Caltrops is about to come out. You visually see it leave. Back to here. So if we look at the top of the dots here, you see which ones need to be applied. That's Sprindar doing all the work for you. So we know that these aren't up, these aren't up. Oh shit, I killed it. I didn't even notice. Anyway. Oh. Did not mean to kill it. So basically what I'm saying is, you can use this right here and only look at the top. That way you can see your feet. It's very important. If you see what I set up, how I set up my screen here, is I have my dots on my left. I have my health bar not by my feet, but away. This can actually be moved if you want to. You don't even need to see that. But I just keep it here because it's always been there. And so that gives me a big area to look at my feet, because I want to be able to see if I'm standing in any, shit. Very important. So if you look, this lasts 15 seconds, this lasts 40 seconds, this lasts 15 seconds, 12, 12 to 14, it takes time to arm, whatever. This lasts 10, 10, 9, 10, or I'm sorry, 10.5, and 10. So we have a lot of duration on everything except for raining slashes. And yeah, just raining slashes in 9 seconds. A lot of 10-second things here. So what we need to do and we need to understand is that to keep these buffs up 100% of the time would be absolutely insane. It'd be insane. So doing the heavy attack rotation, having sustain through heavy attacks, we don't need to keep them up 100% of the time. Also, if you have high latency, this build is for you. I've got a lot of Aussies that message me about this build, or heavy attack builds in general, because they're easier to do with latency, because you just do a heavy attack, then you click a dot. Just like that. Wow, that hit from all the way over here. That's pretty good range. Yeah. Look at that. Whew. What's the range of the thing? 10 meters? Oh yeah, that's great. This candle right here, 10 meters. Nice. That's a freaking awesome range. Sorry, I just didn't notice that. So basically, my rotation is I buff up. So I have 2 buffs here. I go in and do the hail. Alright. So I'll go in and do the hail. Then I'll put the trap down. Light attack. Injection. Light attack. Caltrop. Light attack. Flames of Oblivion. That's my back bar. That's setting up my DPS, right? I don't use standard at the beginning of the fight, because what standard does is it increases your damage by 15%. And so what that's going to do is make my damage boosted for 17 seconds for 15%. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, if I haven't even done my front bar dots, why would I want to put down the standard, right? I would just be applying the dots, and then they would being applied, they would gain 15% extra damage. But why not have them already up, gaining 15% extra damage? Remember that we get 12% increased damage on this skill every 2 seconds, so it's very effective that if it's in its mid to late range, that standard is up, this will hit very hard. So what I do is that I'll do a quick one and then we'll go over it. So I buff up, do my hail, trap, deadly cloak goes off at the same time. Come to the front bar, start doing my rotation here. Deadly cloak is always up, needs to be reapplied before we go back. Put up my caltrop, same thing as before. And just like this. Then deadly cloak. You see deadly cloaks on the same timer as hell is. And just like that. Over and over and over. So it's fairly simple. Use whatever rotation that you like to on the front bar. If you like to just go down the line, say when you come back, From the back bar, you like to do this, then this, then this. You know, whatever works for you, works best for you. I highly suggest doing Venomous Claw on the front bar. There's two different ways, like we talked about. You can do a heavy attack dot, heavy attack dot. So if you see my heavy attack, when I click the dot, it does see this full rotation, like boom. I swing from the left, and then the daggers are back on my right side, like I'm swinging again from my right, right? But if you do a dot, they do that animation. They cut it a little short, so you don't need to do this, then a dot. You can do this, then a dot. So as soon as they hit your back part, whoop, that will be considered a full heavy. As soon as they hit like a golf swing, right? So when you're pulling the golf club above your head, that's when you click it. Boom. Just like that. Easy. Super easy to do. And you just keep doing that. You just hold down that left click. Just keep clicking the dot. Extremely easy. Very effective DPS. And insane resource management. Insane. That's why it's so good. Because we can have all this damage up front all the time and have this resource. So that's it right there. If you have any questions, if something wasn't clear with the DPS rotation, please feel free to leave a comment below. Also, all of the add-ons that I talked about, or add-ons in general, maybe you want some other add-ons for something else, not just DPS. There's an add-on guide at pureturbo.com that you can visit as well. Raven wrote it up, so it's very, very, very good. I just want to throw that out there. So we just want to watch one fast rotation, back bar setting up our DPS, front bar doing our DPS, then going back to back bar, reapplying all of our dots, standard, then back to front bar. I'll do that for us real quick. So we're going to do some pre-game buffs. Take our pot, hail, ejection, light attack, out drop, slide attack, oblivion flame, heavy attack, do our dots, heavy attack, deadly cloak swap, trap, light attack, ejection, light attack. Oh, I forgot to do standard, but that's okay. Oh, I killed. Anyway, you guys get the idea, right? Just heavy attack on your front bar, apply your dots, back bar, light weave, everything, so that you get the Hawkeye passive. And drop your standard when you have all your front dots out. And after you reapply all your back dots. So we're going to swap cancel. If you notice, we swap cancel two things. I forgot to go over it. So we swap cancel two things, right? We swap cancel Oblivion, Flames of Oblivion. You see that I throw my hands down and I get this orb. Or I can just do this, swap. So we're swap canceling two things. We don't want this long animation of me throwing a tantrum. We just want quick, oof, we get the flame thing, right? Same thing with Deadly Cloak. We don't want to put our hands in the air. Do that. What we do is click it, move. It looks like we still do the same thing, but we're not. We're getting the swap thing. And I like to put trap here on my back bar because that's the first thing I'm going to click. So I'm going to click Deadly Cloak swap and then trap. So it's going to look like this. So I don't have to move my fingers on the keyboard, right? I just do Deadly Cloak swap, trap. And then while trap's going out, I hit 2. So I hit 3, swap, 3, hit 2 while that animation is going, and he already starts this. If you want to get a little bit more fancier, since we don't have the Maelstrom weapons, you can do Deadly Cloak swap, block, just like that. It's pretty fast, but at the same time, it's not really necessary. So trap, hail, ejection. You want to do light attacks in between all of them. So do Deadly Cloak swap. Just like that. It's a little harder to do the light attacks, so if you just want to get the rotation down before you start doing light attacks between everything, that is perfectly fine. And that's it for the DPS rotation, guys. Basically, what works best for you will be the best. So I want you guys to go around and play with this a little bit and see what works best for you. Maybe take some of what I did and add it into your rotation. You can try and copy it. You can improve it. You can, make it to work for you. You don't actually have to do this exact rotation. Like I said, what works best for you will be the best. So let's go ahead and take a look at some DPS parsing on the 6 mil dummy, and then we'll be off.